Thank you for coming in to hear Gordon. So this is Gordon Priegel. I'm going to say a couple things before I let him talk, because he's probably going to stop me if I don't. So I have to say a couple things. Can I start, Gordon? Is that
Sure,
okay?
go ahead.
So what you need to know right now is, before we start, is that something that Gordon won't tell you is that he was the go-to guy for the state of Wisconsin. Whenever there was trouble, whenever they had something they had to be dealt with, whether it was related to the lakes or rivers or dams, they called Gordon, right? He was the expert. So I'm really glad. We sat down a few weeks ago and we went through all these questions. We reviewed it last week, and we have some great pictures for you. And I have a surprise for Gordon too as we go through this afternoon. So enjoy the program. I have questions I'm going to ask Gordon. Do you have anything you want to say as we get started?
I just want to say welcome for showing up. I'm not permanently employed by DNR, so don't worry about that. I started back in 1959. I spent 37 years with them. And I retired and started as a research biologist in fisheries. Started on Lake Winnebago. Pretty soon I had the whole state under my control as far as the people working in fishery research. And that's what we're going to probably talk a lot more about.
Excellent. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, after I got out of high school, I joined the U.S. Navy. Spent 4 years there. And when I got out of there, everybody was asking and trying to get us sailors to re-enlist. But when the captain talked to me about it, he said, if you re-enlist, I'm going to be the first one in line that's going to kick you good in the butt. He said, go to school, which I did. I got into the University of Minnesota. And while I was in the Navy, I took a lot of courses. Wisconsin is not quarterly basis like Minnesota, but it is. And so when you go to school in Minnesota after taking courses in Wisconsin school, you lose a quarter. But that's the way it is.
Well, I want to start by, so when Gordon got his job, it was kind of an accident the way you got your job, right? You came back. So can you tell the story about how you got the job with the DNR?
Okay. About the time in '59 I retired, I could call anywhere around the country trying to get a job. You just couldn't find one. Things were really low in fisheries and that field. So I thought, well, maybe I'll get a job with the state. So I went down to Madison on March 17th, took the exam, got 100 out of it. But then when I got back, I had to write a letter to DNR and tell them there were 3 mistakes on the exam. They used the scientific name of fishes in the wrong way. They didn't even have them right. So I had to do that. And then I tried sitting there writing many letters trying to get a job. Finally, a new man had just been hired up in Oshkosh to work on Lake Winnebago on research. He happened to be in a restaurant across the lake over Cal Harbor, and while he was there, the owner's daughter was waiting on tables. But he wasn't concerned only with that. She was a pretty good-looking gal, but he got up and molested her. And the owner called DNR, of course, so the guy was immediately fired. So the man that hired him called up Montana University there, because he graduated from Montana. I'm way ahead of myself. But anyway, he had graduated from there and talked to Dr. Smith if he had anybody that he could trust and send them over. So he suggested me. So I ended up going over to Oshkosh and signed as a research biologist on Lake Winnebago and the Wolf and Fox River.
Excellent. So yeah, Gordon he receives 100% on the test, and then he has to correct the guys that give the exam because they had 3 of the questions wrong. I love it. So Gordon, I'm going to switch to the first slide here. There's a picture of you. This is Gordon, way back in the day. Gordon gave me several pamphlets with articles that he had written with his picture in the paper, so I scanned this one. What kind of fish is in the picture here, Gordon?
That's a lake sturgeon.
It's a lake sturgeon.
Just found in Lake Winnebago.
Okay.
And Wisconsin, especially Lake Winnebago, has the world's most abundance of these lake sturgeon. Nobody even comes close.
Nowhere in the world comes close.
Nowhere else in the world.
Yeah.
I've been called to Canada, Michigan, and a few other places to help them out on trying to reestablish their sturgeon to find out what was wrong. Michigan, where they normally spawn below dams, was nothing but a mud hole. They got to spawn where you got rocks. They like to spawn on rocks. Their eggs stay there and hatch. But the other problem with sturgeon spawning on rocks is darn those suckers and carp come along and suck a lot of them up. So you gotta have big enough stones so that the eggs of the sturgeon fall in between them, where these other fish cannot get at them. Go ahead.
Oh, what are you poking it with up here?
What I got up there? Well, that's a fly-tying spear that they use during the spearing season on Lake Winnebago. It's usually up for 14 days. This last season, it was so warm out that it was very difficult to get around on the lakes. And people have shanties, drill a hole about 2 feet by 4 feet, and they have the spears that just hang there. They don't throw the spear at the fish. They got a decoy, usually about anywhere from 12 to 14 feet, down as far as you got clear water. And then when the sturgeon comes swimming through, they just drop the spear and hope they'll hit it. And then from there, it's get it out of there as fast as possible.
So gravity spearing just falls on its own.
Right.
We got another picture here. What kind of fish is this? Look at its teeth. That's a sheep's head, right?
Yep, that's a sheephead.
And those are his real teeth. Looks like a human teeth.
Again, here we are in Lake Winnebago. They are the most abundant fish in the lake. In fact, in any other body of water in the United States. Most of the family in this group are found in the ocean. And how I got involved with these little critters is that when I first started, the first day on the job, they gave me a stack of paper about a foot high and said, read these, because in about 2 weeks, you're going to be going to a public hearing, which one legislature was going to be there. In regard to, at that time, we had a state boat and a commercial boat fishing for sheephead to get them out. And we wanted to raise 2 more commercial guys to get in there and fish. We got to take more of those fish out because they all go to mink ranchers. In the Winnebago area, there were 6 mink ranches, and they could take the fish, grind it up, and feed it to the mink. They cannot take a carp. If they take a carp, they got to boil it and then grind it up and feed it to the mink. If they don't boil it, you're going to kill off the mink. They got something in their system that just will not take the food from a carp. So it was vital to try to get more people to take sheephead to sell them to the ranchers. Well, we won the battle somewhat at that hearing, but 2 weeks later, this local legislature had a legislative hearing in Oshkosh to try to stop me. Well, once we got going in the hearing, I could convince the legislatures there that by selling the meat to the ranchers, they were going to sell all out of meat worldwide. And this little bring in money for the state of Wisconsin. That's all it takes, more money for the state. We won the battle. We hired 2 more commercial fishermen, and away we went.
That's excellent. I'm going to have you hold the microphone just a little bit like more angled like that. There we go.
Okay.
Yep, that'll be a little louder. So, but then you said the Navy came to record underwater sounds of the sheep's head. Why did they do that? And what were the sounds for?
Well, the Navy, well, one individual that was doing the work was hired, and he was from Germany. He was an expert at it. He was hired by the Navy to do the underwater sounds of fish. That would help submarines detect it. What is it? Is it a whale or is it a fish? Well, they couldn't get enough sounds of sheephead, which are abundant fish in that family in the ocean. So he was given a contract to come and spend some time with me on Lake Winnebago. So he spent about 4 months with me, but he got all the grunting and groaning that them fish gave him. And the Navy was happy, so everybody was happy, and I was glad to get to it. Since I was a Marine or a Navy man myself, helped the Navy, and I guess I did.
So when you're in a submarine, you know it's a sheep's head by the sounds.
By the sound.
Or any other fish that's out there.
No other fish, right.
That's
It's
interesting.
really unique, but it works, I guess.
Excellent. I'm going to go to the next slide here. So Lake Winnebago is known for its sheep's head and walleye, sauger, you said, and then white bass.
Right.
And so I had the 3 different fish up here. I'm going to circle the white bass. And tell us a story about the white bass. They were holding signs that were protesting you. What was going on with the white bass up there?
Well, back in 1959, for some odd reason, the reproduction in the Lake Winnebago system was so great that it was overrun with white bass, sheephead, lake sturgeon, you name it. And what was happening with the situation here is that, I got to remember. Oh, that was 59, right. The population was so great that 2 years later, I was telling the people, and we had public hearings, that in under 2 years, these abundant fish were going to die off. And that's the way they live about 4 years, and that's the end of them. So we had public hearings. Everyone I went to, they'd have big signs. Save the whitefish and downward Priegel.
Out there it is, down in Priegel.
And this went on for a period of time. I gave them 2 years before things were going to happen. And 4 years later, 1964, there were tons of dead white bass that you couldn't believe along the lake shore. Most of it occurred because of the winds along the east shore. And then it switched over to the west shore. And I mean, they had garbage trucks out there hauling away daily, not just once, but many weeks. And they just kept on floating on, and it was really something to see.
So the moral of the story is listen to the research biologist when he tells you how to take care of your white bass.
Well, that's true.
Let's talk a little bit about sturgeon. We got a picture of a sturgeon here. Thing's huge. Those fish are prehistoric, they say, right?
Right, they are.
Yeah, I was in Canada once, and we were fishing, and there was a sturgeon below our canoe. It was as long as the canoe, and we couldn't get it to bite. Go ahead, let's talk a little bit about sturgeon spearing. That's what they were doing up there along the Wolf, right?
Right. Well, Lake Winnebago.
Yeah.
In Lake Winnebago and then the 3 upper lakes in Winneconne, Junior.
But you helped get spearfishing going up there.
Well, they was starting, but then when I came along, we really pushed it along. But the other thing, before I came along, they were not following on to see how many were really being taken. So we set up a bunch of stations where if you got a fish, you had to bring it in. Fish was away, and we took a piece of fin off so that we could age it. Just one sliver of it, not the whole fin. And it worked out. We flew it every year. There was usually anywhere from about 3,000 to 4,000 shanties out there on the lake. Unbelievable what there was. I hated to fly with this Gordon, because if he seen a violation down there, he was down with the old plane. And when you're going down, you don't know if you're 10 feet from the ice or 2 feet. I think, God, we're going to crash. But he always made it.
And then you said that France sent a priest to Lake Winnebago to study the U.S. sturgeon. Why was that?
Well, in France, they have sturgeon, but not that many. Really rare. It's a rare fish over there. And this gentleman that we happened to have a meeting, nationwide meetings, I say, on Lake Sturgeon in Oscar or Milwaukee one time, and we were out having a beer after the meeting, and I happened to see him looking in, and so I went and got him in and started talking to him, and he was wondering if he could come over here and study sturgeon with me for half a year or whatever I let him. And I find out this priest during World War I or II, if you were a priest in France, or you wanted to be a priest in France, all you had to do was go up to another priest, or I don't know who else, but anyway, he was already in a priest. He had special regulations. He didn't have to say Mass. He could get married later on if he wanted to. He had all kinds of other restrictions. But anyway, they finally let him come over and he spent about 3 months with me on Lake Winnebago, studying sturgeon. He was interested in what organisms make them grow so fast up to a certain point, and why do they, at that time, produce buckets, 35 pounds of lake sturgeon. If you got a fish that's about 100 feet or inches, rather, I always thought, you can figure you're going to get about 35 pounds of eggs. And he was wondering why so many and so forth.
So I'm curious, have you ever talked to that priest since that time?
Well, yeah, we kept going on and off. He finally ended up in Canada at some university, Catholic university. And then after he was up there a few years, he married one of the nuns. So I guess he's happy after all.
Well, since I'm doing the interview here, I added a slide here, since I'm pastor, and I have this, I'm going the wrong way. Ichthus, okay, that's the Greek word for fish, okay?
Yeah.
And it's an acronym. And so if you write out ichthus, in the early Christians would put the symbol of a fish on the beach to mark their way.
Right.
And the letters in the Greek spell out the first letter of each name here. So ichthus, the I is for Jesus because it's Jesus. Christos is Christ with the chi, the letter chi. Theos is God, the letter theta. Huios is Son, and Savior, soter, in the Greek. So Jesus Christ, God, Son, and Savior, that's the Greek acronym, or it's the Greek word for fish, and it makes that acronym. I thought that was a nice little addition here to Gordon's story. Keep moving on here. That was my little addition, Gordon.
Okay.
Hang on one second, now my paper's fell. So, Gordon was a very honest worker. He never lost a battle with it when it came to saving fish and protecting lakes. Tell us about rescuing the walleye spawning along the Wolf River. It was a big deal.
Hold that wall.
I'll do that.
Walleye up for me.
All right.
We'll get around to try to get up that side. But along the Wolf River, we're marsh that I was working on, Spurs Marsh it was called. It was about 12 to 14 acres on the marsh. But Chilton up on the Wolf was noted for all the violators. The guys especially loved to sneak a sturgeon when they're up there, they'll take walleyes and so forth. But it's really a problem with them. So what I did, before I went up there to work, the first time I'd gone up ahead, but I didn't finish it all off. But anyway, I came into this local tavern after 4 when all the workers show up, the place was packed. And I walked in, and right away, all I hear is a warden, a warden, a warden. I said, I'm not a warden, I'm a fishery biologist, and I'm doing research on Spurs Marsh, which is 5 miles upriver from here. And I got instruments in that marsh, and I don't want you guys coming up there and fooling around with my stuff. It's really important, you know, fool around with it. Just let me do my work and stay away from that marsh. If you want fish to spear or steal, go somewhere else, but don't come on that marsh. I don't think they ever did. I never had a problem after that. In fact, they even notified me a few times about other people that they didn't even know that were up there illegally fishing. So I knew I at least got that gang of guys. One time at night when we were boom shocking, all of a sudden there was another boat behind me. Well, the fish that didn't come up shocking would float back, and these guys were gonna pick them up for themselves illegally. So secretly I whispered to my guy up in front that was doing the dipping. I was running the boat. So I says, hang on, because I mentioned I'm gonna swing around real quick. But as I swung around and my probes went across their boat, they all yelled out, the 2 guys yelled, shut the electricity off, shut the electricity off. You want to kill us? So there's always a way of getting to somebody, but it's amazing. You can go on that marsh at night, and I can go floating along with our boat, and there'll be so many the male walleyes spread out of the water. They're fin. I've reached down a number of times and just picked them up right in the water, threw them back again. But they were thick in there. One of the reasons, and like I said, the marsh is 95 miles from Lake Winnebago. One of the things, the reason I was in there, is they wanted to find out if when they spawn, the eggs hatch out, and the fry are in there, if those fries are going to make it to Lake Winnebago. So what I did, I had the Spooner hatchery dye 10,000 walleyes, fry, the same size as the ones I got on the marsh, and we dropped them in the river about 80 miles from Lake Winnebago. I couldn't leave them in the marsh because they would have spread out. If I dropped them where I did, it's more straight, not too many marshes that are going to interfere with it. But then we had small nets, about 2 feet in diameter. We kept moving ahead and throwing them in, hopefully to catch some of the dyed red fish that we're doing. And we followed it all the way down to Winnebago. It took us 4 days, but they should make it even quicker there. There were a couple of bars along the way, so I always could have a quick shot. They'd run out, kid, you're getting cold, you better have one. So it wasn't too bad of a job.
Well, when you, oh, go ahead, sorry, no, go.
But see, when you get down to Winnebago on the walleye, their fins are not completely set or gotten large enough so that they can swim around like a perch could. Perch, after it's born, in a couple of days, they got 2 pair of fins, so it can go this way and that way. And that's what these walleyes are going to be feeding on, because they both end up about the same time coming into Lake Winnebago, off the Wolf and the Fox River.
So you made a lot of friends by just going into the bar, starting relationships with them, and they helped you protect the marshes and watch for other fishermen that were illegally fishing.
And around the lake again?
Yeah.
Well, in 1959, when I mentioned about all the fish having a good hatch, and seeing walleyes and just about every species we had in the lake had one of the most tremendous hatches in many years. And what I did, I ended up that summer with my crew, we tagged 10,000 walleyes with little plastic tags. And to make sure I was getting returns to find out what was happening around the lake, there were 10 taverns that I would stop. And I already had told the guys, if they don't play ball with me, I'm not going to play ball with you in the future. So anyway, as I'm going around, I had to stop at 10 bars. Well, I had to have a beer in every one, otherwise they wouldn't like me. Everybody started calling me Big Belly. But it was worth it. We ended up getting 26% of those 10,000 fish back on tags through the fishery. And that number, again, 26 recovery in 1 year, is still number one.
Still
nowhere else is even approached. You're lucky if you get anywhere between 15 and 20% back.
You still hold the record.
That broke a record, yes.
You mentioned boom shocker before. Can you tell us a little bit of what a boom shocker is? And I have a picture up here of some electrofishing.
Okay.
Could you explain that for us a little bit?
Please, that's somebody over. The boom shocker, with the two booms out in front, put an electrical field into the water and stun fish. And when they come up, the crew in front dips them out. And what we have on most of them is DC. And if you get off that mat that's up in front there, or reach into the water, you could get a good sting. And people were afraid if you got too much in, you could really paralyze somebody. But we were careful. But then one day, the crew from the state, I can't remember what government it was, but they came around once or twice a year. We had our own garage, the hatchery, to inspect it, to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do and kept it clean and all that. And one of these boats was alongside the garage, and they asked me what that is. So I told them. I said the wrong thing, because they said nobody is going to use these boats again. It's too detrimental, because if you fell in the water. So we were cut off from using them. So then I was given a job to find somebody in an electrical field that could switch, instead of using AC, use AC. And we wouldn't have the problem of the fish getting stung or us, or fish we don't care than us. So the guys in charge of the fishery on Lake Mendota for the university was a grad student when I was up and going to school myself, and I worked in a lab under him. So here he was, a good friend of mine. So I went and asked him about the situation. He sent me on a guy in electrical engineering, and I told him what the situation was and so forth. He took the job up because he loves to fish for northern pike in Lake Mendota. So we took off. We ended up with a backpack shocker, and one where we walked trout streams instead of a boat. And it was marvelous. No stinging, worked good, better than the old stuff did and everything. The word started creeping all over the countryside. Over a span of about 10 years, I was called by the state of Ohio to come down and talk to their people they bring their boats down, we bring one of ours, and I show them what's wrong with theirs and how they can improve it, similar to ours. And we did that. And then one time, even Fish and Wildlife Service, I had to go down to Virginia for a whole week. They had a lot of their people in, instruct them in the use of the right equipment and so forth. So it was quite popular. Not only did we improve the boom shocker, we also improved the equipment we used in trout streams where you walk and just try to jolt the fish so we can capture them. And or a backpack, same way. So we ended up with 3 good units.
And that's how you counted fish in Milwaukee County, right?
Right.
They'd stun them and they'd float to the top, and then you could count them,
Right.
and they'd swim off later after the stun wore off.
He's talking about a situation I had one year, well, it was 2 years. I was supposed to count in every body of water in Milwaukee County what the fish population looked like. And a lot of the streams that we walked on were concrete areas that were installed during rainstorms to get the water out and flushing it out. And we made it. We hopefully hit everybody. Our veterans hospital there, they had 3 ponds out in the back, and you can't believe the colorful fish they had in there. God, just hundreds of them, but they had them in there.
Now, there was a fish that you introduced to Lake Wingra in Madison.
You gotta bring that up.
Well, you said I could bring it
Okay.
up. The secret's out now.
Okay.
So, why did you introduce it, and what's going on now because of that? Here's a picture of one right behind you.
Talking about the muskie. And the hatchery, the fish hatchery road, is mainly trout, but we do have a small pond in the back, and we raise warm water fish. And we started raising muskies, and when we remove them in the fall of the year, they were assigned to some given lake to be stocked, and which was okay. But when we sank and got the pond down as low as we could, there would always be maybe 50, 75 left. The little guys, about 4 to 6 inches long. And I told my crew, I got a program I'm gonna do on my own, and you gotta swear you're never gonna tell anybody, especially anybody from DNR or the Madison area people, because we're gonna drain the pond down, take all the muskies that are left, and we're gonna stock them in Lake Wingra. They don't have them in there, but the food supply in that lake is way above any lake we got in the whole state. Oh, better than any day. So we did that for about 6 years. And now, the population of muskies in the Madison Lakes is just taking off. And you go there now below the dam on Lake Wingra, and you'll see them trying to hop over to get back where we're going to spawn. And now the Muskie Club always had their grand trophy fishing up on Eagle River. Well, they gave up on it last year for some unknown reason, and they came to Madison Lakes and fished, because there was a lot of them in one given area. Well, they caught muskies more than they expected. So now they're going to be holding their annual big fishery in the Madison Lakes and not the North Country.
All thanks to you.
There's more muskies here available.
Thanks to Gordon for setting that up for them. Now, I got another slide here for you, and this is, let's talk about spearing carp a little bit. It's a big old carp.
Yep.
Where are carp from, and what are they good for?
Not much. The carp were introduced way back in the early 1800s by the first immigrants that came over here from Germany. They hauled them here like mad, And they stocked them mainly in the southern part of the state because there was a lot of vegetation. So they were stocking them from La Crosse all the way to the Mississippi River. And they really took off. All of a sudden, these lakes were just full of carp. Fishermen were excited and mad that this occurred. And in fact, the state even built 2 railroad cars that these German immigrants could haul their fish in milk cans or whatever they had to stock them in various lakes along the southern part of Wisconsin. And they used just the southern part because of all the vegetation that was here in these lakes. You go north, there's not that type of vegetation that the carp like. So they just exploded. And it wasn't until right after World War I ended that the state realized that something's got to be done. So they hired a crew of 8 people, and all they had to do was fish for carp, seine them. They actually built large craft-like boats where 8 people could sleep overnight in them, like they did. They had their own cook on them, and so forth. At one time, there were 40 pieces of land that the state owned along the southern part of the state. Only 2 of them were big ones, in Koshkonong and the one here in Madison. But both of them are closed up now. But anyway, that was the headquarters. The other one, when I say there was 40, all it was is just a shed there where they bought land along all the lakes. Just a small parcel or rented them just so they could get their boats in and store some gear there and so forth. And that's how carp got in the lake, and now there's a problem.
And back in the 70s and 80s, if you had a fish fillet at McDonald's, you were probably eating carp, right?
Well, back in '64, I was called for a week. I can't even think of the name of the town or place, state now. But anyway, it was down south. And on the way home, I stopped in Kentucky where a guy was buying a lot of carp from our commercial fishermen. So I was given the tour of the place, and he was showing me how they make sandwiches for the restaurants, like McDonald's and some of those. It was a fillet of carp, a fillet of cod, fillet of carp, cod, 10 feet long. It was all of 2 feet square, and then they take that and put it in a freezer. And then when it was cut out, they just slice through there and get frozen sandwiches of carp and salmon.
Nice. So there was a story you talked about the sheephead fillets for the Sportsman's Guild. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Could you tell that story?
Okay. The Harris Fishermen's Club here in Madison, once a month, it was always somebody had a cook for the meal. And when we'd have the meeting once a month. So one month, my wife volunteered, and so I bought some sheep head out of Lake Winnebago that were all ready to go. We boiled them up and fried some. The guys just loved them. So pretty soon, on our annual picnic, I'd have the crew out there fillet out 100 pounds of sheephead, and it was everybody liked it. And then they had one time a national meeting out at State Park by Mendota, and it was all about foresters, and they wanted me to have a fish ride for them. So I had all sheephead. They ate them up like mad, and they thought they were all walleyes. Where did you get that many walleyes? God, they were just praising it. They didn't even know what the heck they were eating. But it worked. We even had it at times go, because of big politician meetings in Milwaukee, we had to go down there and have a fish fry for them. Which they didn't know what they were eating.
They didn't know the difference.
But it worked.
They do now.
Well, they do now. It's TV.
Well, I wanted to share one last story that Gordon doesn't know that I'm going to share. Back in 2008, there was a lot of flooding in Wisconsin. Remember Lake Delton? And I remember having to change my travel routes when I drove to Rhinelander because the interstate was underwater and I couldn't take that route. Well, Gordon here is responsible for saving Lake Delton, right? Pretty much. I found this picture online. It's called Priegel Pier. You ever see that? It's named after Gordon. This is up in Lake Delton. And can I read this for everybody?
Go ahead.
It says, in June of 2008, after an unprecedented series of storms, a breach occurred in the eastern end of Lake Delton, completely draining the lake. Gordon, or Gordy Priegel, a trustee for the village of Lake Delton, and a gentleman very knowledgeable of fish habitat, began the process to prepare and eventually restock Lake Delton, which is a very good fishing lake according to avid fishermen. Gordy began by overseeing the eradication of the carp, which remained in the creek. He probably served those to the businessmen in Milwaukee, right? Gordy began raising funds by placing containers for contributions around the area and solicited for donations. Gordy assisted in obtaining fish cribs and prepared natural spawning areas throughout the lake bed. Gordy has arranged for and has overseen the stocking of thousands of fish, which once again has provided fishermen with hours of fishing enjoyment. In addition, Gordy was successful in assisting with obtaining funding for the fishing pier that has been placed at the site of the breach. In appreciation, the Lake Delton Village Board, on behalf of the citizens of Lake Delton, thank you for your dedication of service to the community, and hereby dedicate this pier on the 4th of October, 2012, to be known as Priegel Pier. Awesome.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
You have some other pictures. Do you want me to hold them up?
Fish.
The fish. What about back here? We have Gordon Priegel, the Winton Award. What is this? Lifetime of Sustained and Distinguished Service to Wisconsin Aquaculture.
Okay, the reason I got that, our state would not let individuals raise fish in their own ponds and then stock them out or sell them back to the state. So I know, well, I got involved with a guy in Dodgeville that was raising minnows, but he wanted to raise game fish also. So I told him what, we'll do it on the side again. Don't tell anybody, but I'll get you walleye fingerlings and you put them in your ponds and see what happens to them. So I had my crew bring the fish over and they were instructed, no more talking about them. Well, they turned out good in his pond and so forth. And I finally convinced the state to let these guys do what I did. You know, charge them if you have to have for a permit and so forth, but let them go ahead and do it. And they'll be stocking in bodies of water that we would normally stock. That would help everybody. Plus they could sell what they wanted to the sportsman clubs and various lakes that didn't get state stocking. And they finally agreed on it, and from then out, he been raising walleyes, northerners, and bass, and he's been very successful. He moved it, they now have about 12 huge ponds about the size of this room, in which they're raising them. And a lot of other ones have done the same. So he happened to be on the board of directors for this group, and he's just red. So he probably conned them to give me an award. So,
What's this guy here? Who's this?
Oh, that's a crappie. That
Microphone. Hold up
where's
your
my
microphone.
gal? She gave me that for a birthday gift because it looked like a fish. Well, it is a crappie.
It is a crappie. What I got is just a card that I got from one of my lovely ladies that I have to share some time with. And so I bring it along. I was going to show her some of the other ones and say, yeah, well, we didn't forget about the crappie.
Is that from Wilma?
No.
Oh, surely. What about the muskie back here? This one here.
Okay. Over in Portage, the sewage treatment plants that the city had been using were abandoned, and they were, well, big sections, but the four of them together would be a size, a little bit bigger than the size of this room. The Sportsman's Club wanted to raise muskies in them. And so we went round and round with the city and so forth. And I finally got the okay for them to call it a muskie hatchery. And we'd get them muskies and put them in there. It was in 4 sections. The problem they were having is that they couldn't keep the water in there once they put it in the spring of the year. It was seeping out. And they had a small pump that wasn't doing much. It was like sprinkling walnuts flower bed here next to the building. So what I told him, I said, hey, I got an old beat up pump in the back, and it was belonged to the Fish and Wildlife Service, and they abandoned it. We were supposed to try to sell it, and I says, we'll bring it over and give it to you. Don't tell anybody. But we did. And so they soon could come up and say they really raised a lot of muskies in there for us and spent a lot of time.
Wow.
And that's when they gave me that
The picture.
picture there.
Are there any questions for Gordon? Anybody have any questions to ask him? Well, Gordon, we want to thank you for sharing all this today. And can we just give him a round of applause here? Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Anything you have to add? I think you accidentally shut that off. There we go. Yeah. Uh-oh. I must have bumped the button here, too. Go ahead. All right. Well, thank you for coming today. Thanks for Gordon for sharing and all his wisdom and everything he's done over the years for the state. Thanks, Gordon.